Have you ever wondered what really happens thousands of feet above the clouds? When the lights dim, the passengers sleep, and the cabin falls silent? Tonight, you'll find out. Welcome to Asterisk Scary Dark Narrations. Asterisk, this isn't about turbulence or bad weather. These are the stories that flight attendants whisper about when no one else is listening. The stories that never made it into official reports because they were too terrifying to explain. When you work in the skies long enough, you start to see things that defy logic. Things that follow you even after you've landed. Imagine walking down a dimly lit aisle at 3 a.m., the seatbelt signs glowing red, only to realize one of the passengers isn't breathing. You call for help, but the man disappears before your eyes. Or a flight where a strange knocking sound keeps echoing from inside the cargo hold. But every inspection shows nothing there. Some attendants swear they've seen faces pressed against the windows mid-flight from the outside. Each of these tales was told by real air hostesses who lived through moments of pure terror above the clouds. From ghostly passengers to cursed flights that never made sense, their accounts are chilling, detailed, and all too real. And prepare to descend into the darkness that hides behind the friendly smiles and polite announcements. Because tonight we're taking off into the unknown stories so haunting, they'll make you question every flight you've ever taken. Welcome to Asterisk Scary Dark Narrations, Asterisk. And this is Asterisk 7 True Air Hostess Horror Stories that'll haunt you forever. The first time I heard his voice, I was 34,000 feet over the Pacific, and I swear, something inside me froze. I've been a flight attendant for 11 years, long enough to know the sounds of an aircraft by heart. The gentle churn of engines, the subtle clicks of the galley, the soft murmur of sleeping passengers. But that night on flight PH219, something was wrong. You could feel it in the air, like static before a storm. My name's Emily Carter, Pacific Horizon Airlines, Los Angeles to Osaka. It was a full house that night, families. Students, business travelers, all blissfully unaware of what was about to happen above that endless black ocean. I'd worked dozens of these routes before. Usually I loved the rhythm of it, boarding chaos giving way to dimmed lights and steady hums. But when he stepped aboard, I felt a shiver I couldn't explain. He was maybe mid-30s, pale, sharp features like his skin was stretched too tight. His blazer looked one size too small, his tie slightly off-center. When I greeted him, he didn't smile, just paused at the door, scanning faces as if memorizing them. His eyes darted, calculating C37C. He nodded without a word and slipped past me, vanishing into the glow of cabin lights. I tried to shake it off, just another anxious flyer. We see plenty. Hours later at 1:30 a.m., cabin time, most passengers were asleep. The lights were low, the world outside swallowed by night. I moved down the aisle with my flashlight, checking seat belts, making sure everyone was comfortable. Then I saw him again, still upright, unmoving. His hands clutched the armrests like he was bracing for impact. His screen was black, reflection catching his eyes wide, unfocused, terrified. Sweat glistened on his neck despite the chilled air. "Sir," I whispered, crouching beside him, "are you all right?" He didn't look at me. For a moment I thought he hadn't heard. Then his head turned, slow and stiff. "They know I'm here," he murmured. "Don't act like you're talking to me. They're watching." My training kicked in. I'd seen panic attacks, delusions, breakdowns. But something about his tone, it wasn't confusion. It was conviction. "Who's watching, sir?" I asked, keeping my voice steady. His hand shot out, gripping my wrist so tight I gasped. "You don't understand," he hissed. "They drugged me before I boarded. Don't eat, don't drink. They're testing it on me." I gently pulled my hand free, heart thudding. His pupils were huge, drowning in darkness. "What's your name?" I asked softly. "Daniel Hayes," he said. "I was an auditor, defense contracts. Bangkok. I saw something I shouldn't have. Transfers, codes, names. They'll kill me before we land." The engines suddenly felt too loud, pressing against my skull. I gestured toward the galley. "Let's talk somewhere private." He hesitated, then followed, hunched like prey. Inside the dim galley, the metal counters reflected the blue glow from the exit sign. My colleague Maya joined us.
Ow.
Daniel pressed himself against the wall, trembling. "They can't let me reach Osaka," he said, voice cracking. "Some of your crew, they're not who you think." Maya frowned, whispering he's delusional, but there was something in his eyes, Otter. Consuming terror that made my stomach twist. I discreetly reached for the interphone to alert the purser. The moment my fingers touched it, Daniel snapped, "Don't call anyone, they'll know." I froze. He was shaking uncontrollably now, whispering things I couldn't fully catch names. Numbers, words like classified and offshore. Then, before I could respond, the Air Marshal James Porter appeared behind me. Calm, controlled. "Daniel," he said, voice firm but gentle. "Let's take a seat." Daniel's head jerked toward him, eyes wild. "You think I don't know what that badge means?" he snarled. "You're one of them." And before anyone could move, he lunged for the galley cart, snatching a metal coffee pot. "Stay back. If I don't make it, no one does." Passengers stirred, frightened whispers spreading like wildfire through the cabin. My pulse pounded in my throat. "Sir, please put it down," James ordered. But Daniel's gaze darted, desperate, and he pulled something black from his pocket. In the dim light, it looked like a gun. Screams erupted. James tackled him. The object clattered across the floor, just a portable charger. Relief hit me and vanished as quickly as it came. Daniel sobbed as they restrained him, tears streaking his face. "You don't get it," he whispered. "If I disappear, you'll know I was right." They sedated him under a doctor's supervision. The rest of the flight dragged on in uneasy silence. I tried to convince myself it was over. It's just another incident. Another story we'd bury under paperwork. But something inside me wouldn't settle. Then, silence swallowed everything. When we landed in Osaka, security boarded immediately. They escorted Daniel away, limp and dazed. Most of the crew exhaled in relief. "Another nutcase," someone muttered. I wanted to believe that. God, I did. But his words, "they can tea," let me land, kept replaying in my head like an echo that wouldn't fade. 3 days later, still in my layover hotel, I got a call from my supervisor. "Officials need to debrief you about PH-219, she said. Routine, she claimed. But when I entered the conference room, the air felt wrong. 2 men in dark suits, waited, no badges, no smiles. Miss Carter once said, "We just need you to recount your interaction with Mr. Hayes." Their tone was polite but sterile. When I asked why, one offered a thin smile, routine intelligence follow-up. The other barely looked at me, scribbling notes furiously. I asked, was any of what he said true? About the files? Silence. Then the first man rose. "Thank you for your cooperation. That'll be all." That night I couldn't sleep. Every shadow in the room seemed to shift when I looked away. The minibar hummed softly. The air conditioner whispered. I told myself it was jet lag, but deep down, I felt watched. Back home in Los Angeles, I tried to move on. Flights, briefings, passengers, everything normal until an email appeared in my inbox. No sender. Subject line, PH-219. The body contained 3 words. They were listening. Careful. My skin went cold. I deleted it instantly. Changed passwords, addresses, everything. Told myself it was spam. But weeks later, during boarding for another Tokyo flight, I saw a headline flash on a passenger's phone. American accountant found dead in Bangkok, apparent suicide. The picture beneath it froze me in place. Daniel Hayes. His eyes looked different in the photo, empty, resigned. I couldn't breathe. Maya found me later, pale as chalk. "You okay?" she asked. I nodded, lied. Because how could I explain the guilt? The way he'd begged me to believe him. As the months passed, strange things began happening mid-flight. Cabin lights flickering for seconds, interphone calls from empty galleys. One night, while checking seatbelts, I heard a whisper, soft, broken right by my ear. "They can't let me land." The same rasp, the same voice. I spun around. Row 37C was empty. After that, sleep became a stranger. I'd wake to phantom footsteps outside my apartment, faint beeps like cockpit tones echoing in my dreams. Once, I found my airline badge lying on my kitchen counter, bent, as if crushed by a heavy hand. I'd left it locked in my suitcase. The paranoia grew. Every layover felt colder. Every passenger's glance lingered too long. I tried telling myself it was grief, trauma, imagination, but one night, as turbulence rocked the cabin, the overhead speakers crackled with static, and through it, faint and unmistakable, came a voice. "Emily, they know." The interphone lights flickered red, every line ringing at once. The cockpit called seconds later, asking if we'd made a transmission. We hadn't. When I checked the recording later, it was blank, erased. Now, every time I walk down the aisle in a sleeping cabin, I can feel eyes on me. Sometimes from the dark windows, sometimes from nowhere at all. Maybe Daniel was insane. Or maybe he was right and I'm next on whatever list he found. Because last week, another message appeared in my inbox. This time, there was an attachment, a photo taken from inside an airplane cabin. My airplane. Seat 37C. Empty. Except for a faint silhouette reflected in the window beside it. And tonight I'm flying that same route again. They can't let me land. Would you dare board this flight? I've spent 12 years working in the sky, but lately, it feels like the sky has started watching me back. My name is Claire Dawson. People think being a flight attendant is all champagne smiles and exotic sunsets, but that's just the brochure. The truth is quieter, lonelier. It's waking before dawn, breathing recycled air for hours, and pretending you're calm when passengers are clutching armrests mid-turbulence. For a long time, I believed the air was where I belonged, until last month, when something up there reached back. That morning, April 12th, started like any other. I woke at 4:10 a.m. before the alarm could even dream of ringing. I always do. My body runs on airport time now. A uniform hung ready, pressed and perfect. Lipstick, hair, shoes, all ritual movements done in silence, as if noise might wake something I didn't want to face. Coffee in hand, I stared out at the sodium glow of Miami's streets. Rain had fallen overnight. The pavement shimmered like black glass, and for a moment, I thought I saw something move in it, a shadow bending where no one walked. I blinked. Gone. Just the wind, I told myself. By 5:05, I was driving toward the airport. The highways were almost empty, the radio whispering static between songs. I glanced once in the rearview mirror and caught what looked like another car's headlights, except when I turned, the road behind me was blank. No one there. A pulse of unease climbed my neck, but the terminal lights ahead swallowed it whole. At briefing, Captain Robert Hale was his usual steady self, grayhaired.com, a man carved from routine. First Officer Ruiz was newer, all energy and precision. Hannah, my best friend on the crew, winked as I sat down. "Bet you it's all spring breakers again," she whispered. I smiled back, forcing warmth into it. AV 217, Miami to Kingston, quick tour hop, routine, or so it should have been. Boarding began at 6:20. 96 passengers, families, tourists, students smelling faintly of sunscreen and nerves. I smiled, guided, reassured. A young boy showed me his toy airplane, and I promised we'd make it to Jamaica before he could finish his juice. The engine's low hum was comforting, that sound that feels like order, like control. We took off at 6:47, climbing into pale daylight. The ocean below stretched infinite and silver. Once we reached cruising altitude, I started beverage service. The rhythm of it always calmed me, the small talk, the soft clinks of ice. But at 7:25, something changed. The plane shivered. Not the usual bounce, this was different. It felt deliberate, like hands pushing up from beneath us, then letting go. My fingers went cold. Soda fizz spilled across my knuckles. Hannah looked up from the other aisle, eyes wide. She felt it too. Then, the seatbelt sign chimed on. No announcement, no warning. The interphone rang instantly. Captain Hale's voice came through, low and taut. "All crew, sit down." Now, that tone, it wasn't command, it was fear. I strapped into my jump seat. The engines deepened into a strange, uneven growl. Then everything dropped. The world tilted, gravity reversed. Screams tore through the cabin. Trays, drinks, luggage, all weightless chaos. My stomach slammed into my ribs. For 3 seconds, I felt nothing under me, just air. When we leveled, it was too chaos. It's people crying, praying, clinging to strangers. I tried to speak, but my throat was sand. The captain's voice returned, calm but cracking. "Ladies and gentlemen, we experienced a sudden air pocket. Everything is under control." Under control. I wanted to believe that. I really did. When the sign went off, I moved fast, comforting, cleaning, anything to ground myself. But when I glanced toward the cockpit, the door was ajar. I saw Hale and Ruiz leaning over darkened panels, their faces drained. Hale turned sharply, caught my eyes, and slammed the door shut. We landed safely in Kingston at 8:58 a.m., routine arrival time, but nothing felt routine. Passengers disembarked, trembling, silent. When Hannah bent to check the rear galley, she found a small black voice recorder. "Probably the captain's," she said. "You'll return it, right?" I nodded. But I didn't. That night in my hotel room, the recorder lay in my palm like it had weight far heavier than plastic and metal. I pressed play. Hale's voice filled the air. Personal log. Flight AV217, April 12th. Instruments registered a drop of 620 feet in 3 seconds. Weather radar clean, no turbulence. It felt ... external, like something forced us down. For half a second before the drop, every instrument went dark. No power, no lights, no sound. Just ... nothing. Then silence. The click of the recorder shutting off sounded like a door locking. I sat frozen. The mirror across from me showed a stranger's reflection, my face pale, eyes hollow. And somewhere in the silence between the hum of the air conditioner and my heartbeat, thought I heard it again, that faint hollow rumble, the same one before we fell. Then, silence swallowed everything. The next morning, Kingston's sunlight spilled through the curtains like a glare I didn't want. I left the recorder in an envelope for the captain, unsigned. My hands shook when I wrote his name. I didn't see him again. Not that day. Not ever. The return flight was reassigned, no reason given. Back in Miami, the routine should have reset me. Unpack, shower, repack, but something lingered. In the quiet hours before dawn, I'd wake gasping, certain I'd heard the engines drop out again. Once, half asleep, I swore I felt the bed lift, just slightly, as if gravity had blinked. Then came the call. Hannah's voice was uneven. "Claire, did you hear?" "Hale's grounded," they said. Something about medical leave. "But I heard Ruiz quit. Just walked off mid-debrief." Her words tangled and static. For a second, her voice distorted, deepened, like someone else was speaking through her line. Then nothing but hiss. A week later, I was scheduled on a V217 again. Same route, same call sign. A coincidence, they said. I didn't want to go. But refusing wasn't an option. I boarded in silence. The passengers smiled, joked, laughed. The hum of humanity, normal and fragile. But when we taxied for takeoff, I felt it, that same pressure, like invisible hands pressing down from above. My pulse quickened. The cabin lights flickered once, twice, then stabilized. Hannah glanced at me from the galley, her smile brittle déjà vu, she mouthed. I didn't answer. At 7:18 a.m., cruising altitude reached. I went through the motions, cart rolling, smiles rehearsed until I heard it. Low rhythmic thump from beneath the floor, like footsteps, slow, heavy, measured. Cargo shift, Marcus muttered, already pale. But the sound was too even, too deliberate. It moved under row 11, then 14, then stopped. The air felt thick, charged, like before a storm. Then the lights dimmed, and every screen on board flickered to static. Gasps rose from the passengers. I gripped the seat back, my pulse hammering. The engines dropped out. The hum vanished. There was no sound, no movement, only weightlessness. People screamed, but I couldn't hear them. My ears filled with a low electric hum, like the inside of a storm cloud. Then, from the cockpit intercom, a voice, not Hale's, not Ruiz's, a whisper stretched too thin to be human. Claire, you were meant to see it, my breath caught. The cabin lights flashed back to life, and everything looked normal. Passengers frozen mid-motion, eyes glassy, unblinking. The plane was flying steady, the hum returned. But for one heartbeat, the ocean below looked wrong. It wasn't water. It was black, endless, like a mirror, reflecting nothing. We landed minutes later in Miami. Smooth, routine, but no one spoke. No one seemed to remember the blackout. Hannah's face was pale as ash. Did that just... She started, then shook her head. Never mind. Later that night, I checked my phone. A message waited from an unknown number. No text, just an audio file. I played it and nearly dropped the phone. It was Captain Hale's voice. "I told you it wasn't natural," he whispered. "It's not in the sky anymore. It's in the air, static." Then the sound of a plane engine spooling up, followed by that same hollow rumble. The one that lives now in my dreams. Sometimes when I walk through airport terminals, I hear it faintly, echoing in the vents, following me from gate to gate. And when turbulence hits, I swear I feel it again. The pressure, the drop, the unseen force testing its grip. Maybe the sky doesn't want me anymore. Maybe it never did. And every time I strap in before takeoff, I whisper to myself, please, not today. But deep down I know, next time it won't let go. Would you dare fly with me again? The hum of the engines always used to comfort me, a steady rhythm that meant I was far above the chaos of the world. But now, it sounds like a warning, a heartbeat waiting to stop. My name is Claire Anderson, and I've been a flight attendant for almost 9 years. People imagine glamour, champagne smiles, faraway cities, a life kissed by luxury. But the truth is exhaustion, swollen feet, fake smiles, and the quiet terror of being trapped in a metal tube with hundreds of strangers you must trust implicitly. I used to love flying. Now every takeoff feels like a descent into something I can't control. That November night, flight MA207 from Chicago to Doha began like any other. The cabin lights glowed a dull amber, the air faintly scented with jet fuel and recycled perfume. We were briefed about our VIPs, a senator, a Qatari businessman, and a man named Daniel Mercer in Suite 3A. I didn't think twice about it. Just another name, another face, until he stepped aboard. Looked mid-50s, tall, silver hair, impeccably tailored gray suit. His cufflinks gleamed under the cabin lights. When our eyes met, something inside me tightened. "Good evening, Mr. Mercer," I said, smiling like I'd rehearsed 1,000 times. "Welcome aboard." He gave a slight nod, his voice calm and deliberate. "Thank you, Claire." I froze. He hadn't looked at my badge. Shouldn't have known my name. I told myself he'd overheard someone. Maybe Evelyn, our chief purser, had mentioned it. Still, that small moment echoed in my head like a whisper caught in turbulence. The flight took off smoothly. Dinner service, champagne, chatter, all routine. But every time I passed 3A, I felt those pale blue eyes on me. Quiet, assessing, memorizing. He wasn't leering. It was worse than that. It was like he was studying me. Hours passed. Midnight blurred into 2 a.m. Most passengers slept, screens flickering faint blue glows across their faces. I was restocking the galley when the service light above 3A blinked on. "Whiskey," he said softly when I entered. On 18. His voice carried weight, calm but absolute. I fetched it quickly, returned, and placed the glass before him. His leather notebook lay open beside his laptop. For a moment, I caught a glimpse of something that turned my blood to ice. My photograph. My employee ID photo, stapled to a page lined with handwritten notes. My hand trembled slightly. "Anything else I can bring you?" I asked, forcing the words through a tightening throat. He looked up. His eyes locked on mine. "Claire, that will be all." He closed the notebook with slow, deliberate care. I retreated, heartbeat pounding in my ears. My thoughts spiraled. It couldn't be me. Maybe someone else. Maybe I imagined it. But I knew what I saw. My photo, my name, notes. Later, when I checked on Kevin in business class, Mercer was there, leaning against the galley counter, drink in hand. They stopped talking the second I appeared. "Everything okay?" I asked. Kevin forced a grin. "Yeah, Mr. Mercer was just asking about our routes. Says he's writing a book on aviation." Mercer's faint smile didn't reach his eyes. "I find people fascinating," he said quietly, never looking away from me. When he finally returned to first class, the air seemed lighter. But I couldn't shake the feeling he'd taken something invisible with him. By the 9th hour of the flight, The world outside was a black ocean beneath us. Passengers slept. I moved silently through the aisle, checking seatbelts, blankets, screens. When the first passed 3A, the door was slightly ajar. Inside, he sat under a dim reading light, the same notebook open, and again, that photo. My photo. He was writing something beneath it, each pen stroke slow and deliberate. My stomach twisted. I wanted to slam the door shut, but fear glued me in place. Then he looked up, as if sensing me there, and smiled. I backed away, trembling. Evelyn found me minutes later, pale and shaking. I told her what I'd seen. She frowned, told me not to jump to conclusions. "He's probably just one of those eccentric types," she said, her voice low, but her eyes betrayed unease. When we landed in Doha, Mercer gathered his belongings with mechanical precision. I watched as he locked his briefcase with a digital code, every movement rehearsed. As he exited, he stopped, took my hand. His grip was ice. "It was a pleasure meeting you, Claire," he said softly. "I hope to see you again soon." Then silence swallowed everything. For days after, I couldn't shake the memory of that handshake, how cold his skin had been, how deliberate his words sounded. I dreamed of him sitting in that seat, writing my name again and again in that notebook. 2 weeks later, before a long haul to Frankfurt, security briefed us about ongoing investigations. They passed around photos individuals suspected of unauthorized crew profiling. My pulse spiked. There he was. Same face, same eyes. But the name beneath wasn't Daniel Mercer. His real identity was unknown. Apparently, he'd approached attendants on multiple airlines. Always polite, always curious, always watching. It should have been the end. But 2 months later, during another red-eye, I stepped into first class, and my body froze. Suite 3A. He was sitting there again. Same suit, same stillness, same faint smile. His name was missing from the manifest. "Good evening, Claire," he said, as if no time had passed. I wanted to scream to call security, but professionalism is drilled into us like instinct. I smiled weakly. "Welcome aboard." That flight was the longest of my life. He didn't misbehave. Didn't even press the service light more than once. Yet every time I turned down the aisle, I felt his eyes on me, tracing invisible patterns on my skin. Once when I leaned into the galley, I thought I heard my name whispered, soft, distorted, coming from nowhere and everywhere at once. "Claire." I spun around. At the cabin. The only light was the dim glow of 3A's reading lamp. As the night deepened, strange things began to happen. The service lights flickered, though no one had pressed them. The cabin temperature dropped suddenly, my breath visible in the air. The intercom crackled faint static, then silence. When I checked 3A again, the door was shut. Too quiet. I knocked lightly. No response. Slid it open an inch. The seat was empty. The briefcase sat on the table unlocked. The notebook open. And stapled there again was my photo. Only this time a second image was underneath. Taken from that very flight. Me, standing in the aisle hours earlier. I staggered back, chest heaving. The engines thundered louder than before, as if the plane itself could sense something wrong. I turned, and there he was in the galley doorway, looking for something. His voice was calm, almost kind, but his eyes, they looked wrong now. The blue drained to a colorless gray. I froze. "Who are you?" I whispered. He smiled faintly. "I told you, Claire. I watch people." The lights above us dimmed, flickered, then plunged to darkness. My hand groped for the wall, but the smooth metal felt endless. A whisper moved past my ear. "Thank you for trusting me." When the lights returned, he was gone. His briefcase, his notebook, everything vanished. The seatbelt sign blinked on, and for a brief, unreal moment, the flight continued as if nothing had happened. We landed to chaos. Airport security boarded instantly, bypassing passengers to reach 3A. But there was nothing. Empty seat. No record of his boarding pass, no surveillance footage of him entering the aircraft. Just a faint residue on the seat fabric, like static cling. I told myself I'd imagined it all. That exhaustion had twisted my mind. But that lie didn't last. Because a week later, during another overnight flight, I walked through first class before boarding, checking supplies, aligning blankets, and found a folded note on seat 3A. "Until next time, Claire." The ink was fresh. Now, every time I step into the cabin, I scan the faces twice. I watch their eyes, their movements, the way they say my name. Because I've realized something terrifying. In my world, we're trained to observe. Sometimes the ones we're watching are already watching us. And when the cabin lights dim, and I feel that cold gaze from somewhere in the dark, I wonder if he asks back, if he ever really left. Okay. Would you dare to fly with me tonight? The first time I felt eyes on me from beyond the cabin lights, the sky outside was calm to calm. The hum of the engines had always been a comfort before that night, a steady lullaby that made me feel safe above the clouds. But something in that silence shifted. The air felt charged, like static before a storm. I remember glancing down the narrow aisle, tray in hand, and seeing him for the first time, seat 8C, watching me as if he'd been waiting. I'd only been a flight attendant for 6 months, still new enough to love the rush of takeoffs, the smell of jet fuel, the rhythm of passenger chatter. Every morning began before dawn in my small Aurora apartment, ironing my uniform until the navy fabric gleamed under the kitchen light. My father would text me before every flight. "Proud of you, kid. Stay alert." He never liked the idea of me flying so often. I used to laugh that off until Ethan Rowe appeared. He was ordinary enough, at first glance. Dark hair, pressed shirt, eyes that seemed to catch the overhead light a second too long. I poured him black coffee, and when our fingers brushed, the contact lingered. Not aggressive, not even inappropriate, just deliberate. "Thank you," he murmured, eyes fixed on mine. His smile didn't reach his eyes. I told myself it was nothing. People look, passengers notice. But every time I turned down the aisle, his gaze was waiting and blinking, patient, heavy. 2 days later, on my flight to Phoenix, he was there again. Same polite nod, same quiet smile. "Nice to see you again," he said. I forced a grin, pretending it was routine. "Coffee again?" "You remembered," he said softly, and the words wrapped around me like cold fingers. My heart pounded, but I played it off. Coincidence, I told myself. Frequent flyers were common. But as the weeks went by, the coincidences piled up like turbulence I couldn't escape. He appeared on flight manifests, with surgical precision, Denver to Chicago, Denver to Dallas, always under a different seat number. The moment I stepped onto the plane, I'd feel it before I even saw him. That pressure in the air, that silent awareness that I was being watched. His presence felt like a shadow stitched to my routine. The first night I truly felt afraid was after a long shift. I was walking through the employee parking lot, phone in hand, the sodium lights flickering above. A soft buzz drew my attention. A new Instagram request. O_83. No profile photo, no posts, just that name. My stomach twisted. My badge had my full name. He must have memorized it. I didn't accept. I didn't block. I just stared at the screen until my reflection blurred in the glass. The sound of the wind between the parked cars suddenly felt like whispering. A week later, during a Dallas layover, I thought I had escaped the unease. I'd just checked into the crew hotel, exhaustion tugging at me, and decided to grab tacos from a small place around the corner. The warm smell of tortillas and grilled meat greeted me, something comforting, something normal. Then I froze. Standing at the counter, as if pulled from a nightmare, was Ethan. His head turned slowly, and that same knowing smile spread across his face. "Small world," he said. My throat tightened. "What are you doing here?" "Business," he answered, too icily. "And you, with the crew?" I managed. His gaze crawled over me, studying. "I figured you'd be around. I left my food behind." My hands shook as I locked the hotel door twice that night. The hum of the air conditioner sounded too much like breathing. Every time the elevator stopped outside my room, I held my breath. I told myself I was overreacting. I told myself I was safe, but deep down I knew I wasn't. For days I didn't see him. I began to believe it was over, till the flight to Salt Lake City. He was seated in the front row this time, his eyes waiting as I checked seatbelts. "You look tired," he said quietly. "Long day," I replied, not meeting his gaze. "I could help with that," he whispered, and something in his tone made the world narrow. I walked away, pretending not to hear. Throughout the flight, I could feel his stare, like a cold weight pressing into my spine. When everyone else deboarded, he lingered until the very last second. As he passed me, he leaned close enough that I could feel his breath on my ear. "I'll see you soon." My skin went cold. My throat locked up. I couldn't move. That night I broke. I called my supervisor, words tumbling out between sobs. She listened, calm and measured, then promised, "You did the right thing. We'll report it. We'll change your routes." For the first time in weeks, I felt relief. For the first time, I thought maybe it was over. Then silence swallowed everything. I moved to new routes, new layovers, new faces. For weeks, I didn't see him. My heartbeat slowed. My hands stopped trembling when I poured coffee. I began to sleep again until the envelope appeared. It was waiting on the floor of my apartment one evening, slid under my door like a quiet threat. No return address, it's just a white envelope, perfectly clean. I tore it open with shaking hands. Inside one sheet of paper, typed words that burned into me. "You shouldn't have told them." The letters looked too neat, too mechanical, like something printed by a machine that didn't understand fear. My phone slipped from my hand. I called the police, voice cracking. 2 officers came, took the note, promised to review security footage. I watched them leave, feeling smaller than I'd ever felt. When they called days later, their voices were apologetic. Nothing on the cameras. No one we can ID. That night I pushed my dresser against the door. Every sound felt amplified, the pipes, the hum of the fridge, the creak of floorboards upstairs. Each one felt like footsteps. I called my dad at 3 a.m., voice trembling. He begged me to come home. "It's not worth it, kid. Come back, please." But I couldn't. I wouldn't let him take the skies from me. I transferred to a different apartment, higher floor. Better locks, cameras in the hallways. The airline arranged counseling and gave me flexible hours. Slowly, the fear dulled to a whisper. Months passed. Then years. I told myself maybe he'd gotten bored. Maybe he'd moved on. I started dating again, seeing friends, posting photos only after I'd left the places, just in case. But that sense of being watched never left. It clung to me like the pressurization before takeoffs. Something invisible, yet suffocating. Then came the Portland red-eye, first time back on that route since it all began. Everything about it felt too familiar. The hum of the engines, the faint rattle of service carts, the reflection of passengers' faces in the cabin windows. I tried to ignore it, to focus on work. But halfway through, as I poured a cup of coffee for an old woman, I felt it again, the weight of a stare that didn't blink. I turned slowly. Row 8. Seat C empty. A shiver crawled through me. My breath hitched. I forced myself to continue the service, but the air felt colder now. The light flickered briefly. I told myself it was turbulence. Then, from the corner of my eye, I saw a tan outline where no one sat. A shape in the reflection on the window, faint but unmistakable. The curve of a head, the faint glint of eyes. I blinked hard and it was gone. After landing, I checked the passenger list. There was no Ethan Rowe. No one even seated in 8C. That night, I dreamed I was walking down the aisle mid-flight, and every seat was filled with shadows wearing his face. I woke, gasping, heart hammering, the sound of my phone buzzing on the nightstand. A message from a private number. "Nice to see you again." I stared at the screen until my reflection blurred into the glow. My phone slipped from my hand. I wanted to believe it was coincidence. A prank. A glitch. But when I looked closer, the message timestamp matched the exact minute I'd turned and seen that reflection in the cabin window. It's been 2 years now. I still fly. I still smile for passengers. But every time the cabin lights dim and the engines steady into that perfect hum, I feel it again, the weight of unseen eyes in the aisle. Sometimes when I pour coffee, I still smell his cologne, a faint trace of cedar and static. And when I look up, I see him reflected in the curved glass of the emergency exit window, sitting exactly where he always did. Watching, waiting. Would you dare board that flight? The smell of rust and damp paper still lingers in my memory, like something that never really left my lungs. It was the fall of 2003 when this all began, and I swear, even now, I can still feel the cold weight of that place on my chest. I was 17, restless, and stupidly brave, the kind of kid who thought the world couldn't touch him. My best friend Mark and I had been deep into urban exploration, crawling through forgotten houses, barns, and that strange half-buried underground gas station near our school. None of it ever scared me. Not really, till we found the nursing home. We were hunting for something called Little People Village, this creepy stonework miniature town supposedly built by a mad artisan in the woods. The legend said that whoever sat on the throne he carved would die 7 years later. I laughed at that. I even sat on the damn thing, thought it was hilarious. But that day, when we couldn't find it at first, we decided to make a detour. Just a few exits up the highway stood a decaying nursing home complex, swallowed by vines and time. It felt like a perfect stand-in adventure. Quiet, easy to access, and two to thrill-seeking teens. Just spooky enough. The first time we went, the air inside was thick and cold, like the building was holding its breath. You had to crawl through a shattered basement window to get in, landing in this wide, echoing room that looked like a forgotten theater. A cracked piano slumped in one corner beside a mural that stretched the length of the wall, faded colors depicting smiling nurses and children with eyes that had peeled away. The smiles were gone, leaving only pale smudges where faces used to be. Even then, the place made my stomach twist. Every room whispered of abandonment. Wheelchairs tipped on their sides, bird corpses scattered in corners, graffiti bleeding across the walls. Yet there was something quieter than decay there. A kind of pressure, as if the building itself didn't want us inside. Still, Mark loved it. We returned again and again, over a dozen times, until we could navigate the halls blindfolded. It became our secret place, a decaying monument we could control. The layout was simple, a T-shaped structure with 2 wings and a basement that connected everything. The only working path inside was through that same basement window. Every time I climbed through, a shiver ran down my spine, but I told myself it was just the cold. The deeper we went, the more it felt like the air thickened, heavy with moisture and something else. Grief, maybe. There was one room upstairs where the linoleum floor was stained a deep brown red, shapes spreading out like a shadow of something that had happened long before we were born. We joked it was dried blood, though neither of us could laugh for long in that room. We never stayed there too long. Even Mark, who never believed in ghosts, said that space made his skin crawl. On the day it happened, we had been inside for almost an hour. Afternoon light was fading, filtering through broken windows and dust. The two of us had brought our BB guns, realistic heavy things that clacked when you cocked them. We'd been shooting at debris and laughing, breaking the silence in bursts of boyish arrogance. Then, out of nowhere, came the sound. Above us, a thunderous running. Heavy boots, pounding across the second floor. The weight of someone large, easily over 6 feet, sprinting at full tilt down the far corridor. The sound was so clear, so real, that it froze the breath in my chest. Mark's eyes met mine. Then he grinned, that reckless grin of his. Without a word, we split. He dashed for the stairwell nearest the sound, and I bolted for the other, hoping to cut the person off if they doubled back. The echo of boots thundered once, twice, then stopped. Dead silence. When I reached the top of my stairs, the air was different, colder, dense, carrying a faint metallic temps. I could hear Mark's footsteps far down the hall as he started clearing rooms, one by one, calling out quietly, "Anyone here?" I stayed in the corridor, peering into each open doorway as the fading lights stretched long shadows across the floor. No one. Not a single sound but our own breathing. We searched for nearly an hour, retracing every step, every wing. No loose floorboards, no open windows, no new footprints in the dust. Whoever we heard had just disappeared. It was like they'd been erased mid-run. When we finally gave up, it was twilight, the kind of dim orange light that makes every corner look alive. We climbed down into the basement, crawling back through the window into the chill of early evening. The sky had gone the color of bruises. About a third of the way to Mark's truck, we both froze. Neither of us said a word, but I know he felt it too, that sudden, piercing certainty that someone was watching us. Slowly we turned, then silence swallowed everything. There, in In the second-floor window, the one by the staircase, something was staring down at us. At first I thought it was a reflection. The glass shimmered faintly, fractured by old cracks. But then it moved. The head tilted. Its features sharpened in the dying light, and I swear I could make out the hollow sockets of eyes sunk too deep into gray, paper-thin skin. There was no body, just a head, floating framed by shadow and mist. I remember whispering, "Do you see that?" Mark didn't answer. His breathing had gone shallow, almost silent. The thing didn't blink. Its mouth opened slightly, and though it was too far to hear, I felt it whisper something the way you feel thunder in your bones. For a moment, I thought the mist around it moved like fingers. Then it was gone. Just gone. Mark cursed under his breath, turned on his heel, and we both started walking fast. The gravel crunched beneath our boots, every sound unnaturally sharp. The closer we got to the truck, the heavier the air felt, like the night itself was pressing down on us. I looked back once more before getting in. The window was empty, but in its reflection I swear I saw movement in the trees. We didn't talk during the drive. The radio was off, the road empty. It wasn't until we were halfway home that Mark finally said it wasn't human. His voice trembled slightly, which scared me more than anything. Mark didn't get scared. We promised each other we'd go back, to prove we weren't crazy. But when we returned a week later, something had changed. The air smelled like rotten metal, stronger than before. The basement felt wrong. The murals seemed darker. The painted smiles twisted in ways I didn't remember. On the stage where the piano sat, I noticed something that hadn't been there before. A dent in the dust, the shape of a large footprint. Heavy boots. That night I dreamed of the window. In the dream, the head spoke. A single word I couldn't understand, drawn out like static. I woke up drenched in sweat, my reflection in the mirror looking slightly off. My eyes seemed darker, my face paler. I laughed it off then, but the next morning, I got a message from Mark. It was a photo of his window, and in the reflection behind him was that same gray face. We didn't talk much after that. A few months later, his family moved away. We lost touch. Years passed, I never went back to that place again, though I drive past the area sometimes. The nursing home's gone now, replaced by a bright new condo complex with playgrounds and trimmed lawns. But sometimes when I stop at the light by the highway exit, I swear I can see it still, that second-floor window, faintly glowing through the trees. And if I look too long, I get that same feeling again, like I'm being watched. Maybe it was a spirit, one of the patients who never left. Maybe something followed us that night, something that's still waiting to be seen again. Or maybe sitting on that cursed stone throne wasn't as harmless as I thought. Would you dare return to that place? The wind scraped across the lock like skeletal fingers, whistling through the folds of the tent as the fire cracked weakly against the cold. I still remember the hum of the radio that night, that faint static, the kind that makes your skin crawl before you even know why. Paul and I had driven up to Loch Auber for one of our usual fishing weekends. We'd been best mates since childhood. Those trips were our way to escape the noise, work kids, the endless loop of responsibilities. It was supposed to be calm, peaceful. The first night had that rare kind of silence only Scotland can give you. No engines, no people, just the whisper of trees and the slow slap of water against the rocks. Paul was his usual self, cracking open a beer, telling some crude joke, and I remember laughing so hard it echoed across the loch. We had all the gadgets this time, too. Portable stove, chargers, even a Bluetooth speaker. But the thing he was proudest of were the new walkie-talkies. "They'll save our phone batteries," he'd said, grinning like a kid. I didn't think much of it until the next day. That afternoon, our lighters gave up on us. Typical. So I volunteered to make the 6-mile walk to a little newsagent down the road, while Paul kept the fire going. We tested the radios as I walked, laughing at our fake military code names. Zulu 59er, "Your mum's a slag," he'd said. It was all just stupid fun until the hills cut the signal off. Static took over. Kept talking into it, half hoping he'd respond. Nothing. By the time I reached the shop, bought the lighters, and started back, the sky had turned that sickly shade of gray before dusk. I switched the radio back on, static again, just that low hiss. Then a crackle. At first I thought it was interference, maybe from a nearby trucker's CB. But then, through the distortion, I heard something soft, breathing, sobbing. "Paul." I said into the receiver, "You all right, mate?" No answer. Just that quiet, muffled crying. Not loud. Just those broken little gasps people make when they're trying not to cry. I kept walking faster. "Hey, what's going on? You okay?" Then faintly, "Lydia. I'm so sorry." I stopped dead in the middle of the dirt road. His voice was shaking, almost childlike. The name didn't ring a bell. Lydia. Who the hell was Lydia? "Paul, mate. What are you talking about? Who's Lydia?" "Nothing. Just static." Then more crying. Deeper this time, like something inside him had cracked open. The wind picked up, carrying mist off the water. My heart hammered so hard I could hear it in my ears. I broke into a jog, clutching the radio like a lifeline. "Paul, talk to me." He didn't. Instead, the signal filled with this horrible metallic whining, a screech that seemed to burrow straight into my skull. Then came the scream, a raw guttural sound that twisted through the static like it wasn't coming from any human throat. I ran the last stretch of the path as fast as I could. The campfire came into view, flickering low, and I screamed his name, "Paul." Over and over. Then silence swallowed everything. And out of that silence came his voice, calm, steady. "What?" he said, stepping out of the trees with a bundle of firewood under his arm. He looked fine, not a tear, not even out of breath. My legs nearly gave out. "What the hell, man?" I gasped. "Are you messing with me?" He frowned, clearly confused. "Messing with you? What are you on about?" I stared at him, his clean face, his normal tone, and felt a deep chill settle in my bones. The same voice I'd just heard sobbing over the radio now stood in front of me, completely normal. For a moment, I couldn't speak. The wind rattled the tent flap, and the lock whispered against the rocks. He was right there, real, solid, but my mind kept replaying that broken voice, the one saying, "Lydia." "You weren't crying?" I asked, breathless. He looked insulted. "Crying? What are you talking about?" I told him everything, the sobbing, the apology, the scream. I expected him to laugh, maybe roll his eyes and admit it was a prank, but he didn't. He just stared at me, his brow furrowed. When I got to the part about the name Lydia, something in his expression changed. His face went pale. "Wait," he said quietly. "Did you say Lydia?" I nodded, confused. "Yeah, why? You know her?" He took a long breath, staring past me like he was trying to decide whether to tell me something. Then he said, "I haven't told you this yet, but Emma's pregnant. We found out last week. It's a girl. She wants to name her Lydia." For a second, the whole forest felt still, too still. The water didn't lap.
Oh.
The fire barely moved. "You're joking," I whispered. He shook his head slowly. "I swear to God." We stood there, staring at each other in silence. My skin prickled, as if the world had tilted slightly out of alignment. The sound I'd heard, the voice that sounded exactly like him, apologizing to a girl who didn't even exist yet. That night, neither of us slept much. We stayed by the fire, trying to rationalize it. Maybe the radio picked up another frequency. Maybe I'd heard someone else crying, a hunter, a lost hiker. We wanted to believe that. But when you've heard your best friend's voice breaking apart over a name that's not supposed to exist, reason starts to crumble. By morning, it all felt like a strange dream. We packed up, drove home, and tried to laugh it off. But deep down, I couldn't shake the feeling that I'd heard something I was in teen meant to hear. Something from ahead. Months passed. Paul's baby was born that winter, a girl, Lydia. When I visited the hospital, she was wrapped in a pink blanket, tiny fingers curling around Paul's thumb. He looked so happy. But behind that smile, I saw something else, a flicker of fear that matched my own. Years rolled by, Lydia grew bright and curious. 10 years old now, nothing strange ever happened. No accidents, no tragedies. Yet sometimes when Paul posts family pictures online, I catch myself staring too long. 'Cause in the background, the lighting's always a little off. The edges of the photo blur, like the air itself is bending. Sometimes when I visit them, his radio, the same kind we used on that trip, crackles on by itself. Just static. Once I thought I heard a faint voice through it, whispering, "I'm so sorry." And every time I hear that sound, a cold thought crawls through my mind. Maybe that voice wasn't a message from the past. Maybe it was a warning from the future. Maybe what I heard that day hasn't happened yet. And when it does, I'll know the moment it begins. Would you dare return to that place? It started with a sound, something faint, almost like whispering static seeping through the walls. I remember freezing in place, the way the air thickened, pressing down on me like invisible hands. Back then, I didn't believe in any of it. Angels, demons, spirits, they were all just stories meant to scare kids into obedience. I'd been raised around mild Christian values, sure, but faith never sank its claws into me. I was the skeptic who liked to flirt with danger, reading about witchcraft, aliens, and secret societies on dial-up internet late into the night. It was harmless curiosity, or at least I thought so. When I was 12, my parents decided to move. The house we almost bought looked perfect at first 2 stories. Wide front porch, sunlight pouring through dusty glass. My grandmother, though, refused to step upstairs. She said the second floor felt wrong, like it didn't belong to the rest of the house. My mother laughed it off until she swore she saw a little girl staring at her from an upstairs window. Later, they learned a fire had claimed a child's life there years ago. My parents still considered buying it, but a roach infestation drove them away instead. I remember feeling oddly disappointed. Something about that house had pulled at me. Something curious, hungry. We ended up moving into a different home nearby, a quiet street, fenced yard, peeling white paint. On our first week there, the woman who'd sold us the house stopped by. She said her mother had died inside, and sometimes appeared, but that we shouldn't worry. "She's harmless," she said. My mom laughed awkwardly, but I caught the way her smile didn't reach her eyes. The air in that house was always slightly colder than it should have been. A few weeks later, I met my best friend. He lived down the street at house number 12. Ours was 112. It felt like fate. Our parents got along quickly, and during one of their get-togethers, my mom mentioned that creepy fire story. My friend's mom froze mid-sentence. Turns out they'd lived in that very same house for 10 years, moved because of it being incredibly haunted. A little girl. And a man, she said. A hateful man. Hearing that, my mother went pale. I laughed, pretending to be amused, but inside I felt something stir a shiver of excitement.
Maybe.
Ghosts weren't just stories after all. By 14, my obsession with the supernatural had only grown. I'd spend hours in the basement with flashlights, mirrors, and candlelight, hoping something would look back. Ever did. I tried everything, scrying with ink, chanting names I found online, sitting in the dark until shadows began to breathe. Still, no proof? I wanted to believe, but the silence mocked me. Until that Christmas. My parents, not knowing any better, got me a Ouija board. I remember running my fingers across the smooth letters, the scent of new cardboard filling the room. It felt like holding a key I didn't understand. I didn't touch it for weeks, though. Not until one dull afternoon when my friend came over. "You want to try it?" I asked, half joking. He hesitated, but followed me down to the basement anyway. The air was cool and damp, and the bare bulb flickered overhead. When I asked if there was anyone here, nothing happened. The planchette sat still, dead weight under my fingertips. My friend chickened out halfway through, muttering about bad luck. I laughed and told him I'd do it myself. I whispered, "If there's anyone listening, show me." Nothing. I packed it up, disappointed. But that night, the lights started flickering. At first I thought it was the wiring. Then my dog started barking at corners. Doors creaked open on their own. Glass slid an inch across the counter. I should have been terrified, but I wasn't. I was thrilled. Finally, proof. Over the next months, things escalated. Shadows darted. Toys whispered without batteries. The air grew heavy at random spots in the house. My parents didn't notice much, but I could feel it. Something had awakened. Something that watched. The first time I saw it, I was 16. Walking from the kitchen to the living room, I caught sight of my mother passing through the hallway, wearing a pale pink dress. I remember thinking it was strange. She never wore pink. When I reached the living room, there she was, sitting on the couch with my father, watching a movie. I froze. Who was in the hallway? I told them what I'd seen, but they brushed it off. I convinced myself it was the spirit of the woman who died here, a Gentle guardian, maybe. What? It made me reckless. If ghosts were harmless, I had nothing to fear. But I was wrong. Oh, so I was wrong. It began small, the cold spots turning into icy breaths, the lights dimming even when the power was steady. I started waking up at 3 a.m., 2 faint knocks on my wall, rhythmic like tapping fingers counting down. Sometimes the closet door would creak open by itself. I'd shove furniture against it, but it still slid open, inch by inch, like something wanted me to see inside. Then silence swallowed everything. The nights became longer after that. The quiet wasn't peace, it was waiting. Even my sleep wasn't mine anymore. Some nights, I'd feel the mattress dip beside me, the air pressing down as if someone or something had climbed into bed. I could feel the springs compress, the weight shift closer. My skin crawled, but I couldn't move. The fear froze me solid. I started hearing things, the distant hum of voices when the house was empty. Static whispers threading through the walls. Sometimes I'd catch my reflection in the dark TV screen and swear the reflection smiled before I did. And the dolls. The ones my little brother played with, they started talking again. No batteries. It's just that cold, tinny laughter that made my stomach twist. Then came the night of the light bulbs. I was reading Harry Potter in the basement, trying to distract myself. The small lamp glowed beside me, soft yellow light spilling across the page. I remember thinking how ridiculous people were for calling these books evil when the real evil was already here, hiding in my walls. And then pop. The bulb exploded. Shards flew across the room. I leaped up, heart pounding, running for the stairs. But as I sprinted, the toys under the steps began to giggle and hum. The sound chased me up faster and faster until I flicked on the hallway light only for that bulb to explode too. Then the living room. Then the one upstairs. 4 bursts of shattering glass, like the house was laughing at me. That's when I stopped pretending it was coincidence. The fear changed me. I couldn't sleep. I avoided mirrors. I stopped inviting anyone over. Even my family felt distant, like something invisible was draining warmth from us all. Every night I'd lie in bed and beg the door to stay shut. But no matter what I stacked against it, it would open, slow and deliberate. I started whispering bargains into the dark. You can stay. Just don't touch me tonight. The silence always answered back. Then one night, it touched me. I was in the basement again. My safe place turned prison. My chihuahua baby lay curled on my chest, trembling in her sleep. When I turned off the light, she shot up, growling a deep, broken sound I'd never heard from her. Her fur bristled. I felt her heart beat against mine, fast and terrified. I stared into the dark. Something was there. I couldn't see it, but the air moved, thick and alive. Baby whimpered, then bolted off me and fled. I tried to follow, but I couldn't move. My arms were pinned to my sides, my back forced into the couch. Pressure crushed my chest. My body sank like something heavy was sitting on me, pushing me through the cushions. I couldn't breathe, couldn't scream. And yet there was nothing there, just darkness and hate. Felt it. A raw, venomous hatred that pulsed through the air, hating me for existing. I've never felt anything like it since. It wasn't human. It wasn't even emotion. It was intent. Predatory. Ancient. My vision blurred as the static in my head screamed louder. When it finally released me, I bolted upstairs half naked, slamming into walls as the bulbs burst one by one. I reached my parents' room and screamed their names. They didn't wake. Shook them, cried, begged, but they stayed frozen, breathing softly like they were trapped in some deep, unreachable dream. My brother. Ties shut, unresponsive. That's when I understood. Whatever this thing was, it didn't want help. It wanted me alone. I collapsed beside my brother, clutching his arm, whispering prayers I barely remembered from childhood. Jesus, please. And then it stopped. Everything. The noise, the cold, the weight on my chest. It was gone, like someone had cut the world's sound in half. My brother woke up dazed, asking why I was crying. The next morning, I told my parents everything. My mother didn't laugh this time. She said she believed me. That afternoon, we burned the Ouija board in the fire pit. Tor tried to. Even drenched in gasoline, the damn thing wouldn't catch fire. It just sat there, black and unburning. Eventually, my stepdad tossed it in the trash. Maybe it was finally destroyed at the dump, but deep down, I don't think it ever really left. It's been 15 years now. Nothing's happened since. No whispers. No cold spots. No lights exploding in the dark. But sometimes when I close my eyes, I can still feel it watching, waiting for me to invite it back. Would you dare open that board?